So I'm back and I'm here today because I want to show you how I made this jumper and the matching short out of a sweatsuit that I purchased online from a wholesaler. And I want to give you intel on how to do these heat transfer vinyl applications if you don't have a Cricut or silhouette cutter and you don't have a professional heat press that is used on t-shirts. I wanted to do a polka dot matching set. Originally, I had found when I had taken my designs down from Print All Over Me due to quality control issues and other things, I really had found a passion for repeat pattern and creating repeat patterns and designing pattern for garments or homewares and things like that. And I noticed after I had done that I had actually been doing that for a long time without being aware of it. I wanted to make a polka dot matching suit because I wanted something fun. The weather has just lightly changed now and we're getting into spring, and so it's warm during the day but it cools off at night still. And I like to wear these things around my house. But I decided to make something that I could take out. Now, I am someone who does not wear sweatpants often. I am known for wearing jeans around the house, even when my previous roommate used to make fun of me for it all the time and post about it during COVID. So I was trying to think of ways that I could make sweatsuits more fun, more fashion. And one thing I was thinking about was an old Comme des Garçons wallet that I had that was gray and had these white polka dots on it. They were organized in a gridded fashion, and I ended up selling that on the RealReal, and I really miss that wallet. I really miss how irreverent and fun that design was. I have used these heat transfer pieces before. These are from a brand called Arteza, which is, I think, exclusively now sold on Amazon. But these other colors, these more off-whites and a couple of the pastels, this came from some random Amazon brand. But I just double-checked when I purchased to make sure that they heat up and apply at the same temperature and they'll be easy to use. Be done. They were made for use on fabric, and it would be easy for me to execute this. I purchased a 3-inch paper punch on Amazon, thinking I could use this on the vinyl sheets. In the fine print of the listing, it did say this does not work on vinyl, and I only saw that later when I went to return it. There was no technique I could use. I tried to sharpen the punch with aluminum foil. I tried to sandwich the vinyl in between paper so maybe there would be some grip. I was hoping to just mass produce these circles and be able to really play with them very quickly. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and that wasn't something I was able to do. However, I did find a glass in my cupboard that was exactly 3 inches in diameter. So I used that. Now, it is easy to do this by hand. What I want to say is you will not get a perfect circle from doing it by hand. The reason for that is when you take an X-Acto blade and you cut around a cup or a glass or something like that, even when you're cutting down a straight line on a ruler, the angle of your hand changes. That changes the entrance point of the blade as you're moving around. And specifically in circles where the meeting point of the end and the beginning is so exact, you will end up getting a little tail or a little misfire there. So you need to be aware that none of these circles are perfect. I did mess up on a lot of these circles, and so I saved them for maybe areas where they would be cropped off and I could slice a big chunk of it off and then use them. But overall, I had no problem. I made a lot of extra, and I even chose a lot of extra colors that I didn't end up using. That will come into play later. You can see in this video is I am cutting out as many circles as I can on these vinyl pieces, changing my blade regularly, and making sure that I am pressing hard down on the glass so that it doesn't move. That's the other thing to consider, is that these vinyl sheets are quite slippery. So when you are making this, it's very easy for your glass to slip or your template to slip, something like that. You could use tape if you need to use tape. But in this case, I just thought my hand was easier. I figured out which side was less slippery than the other, and I did it that way. I had multiple pieces that I ended up throwing away because they were not usable. I didn't cut all my circles out of the vinyl. I did leave some vinyl left to work on other projects. You can see that I'm organizing the dots slightly by color family and off to the side. What that does is that gives me the ability to create a color scheme very easily. So if you think of a painter putting paints on the palette and kind of figuring out what colors they want to use because they're already pre-mixed, it's the same for this. I am not the best color theorist. My weakness as a designer is color. I will throw everything in the kitchen sink at a project and someone will say, edit back. It's the opposite of me from creative and writing. I'm a really great editor, but when it comes to designing, I need to be edited. There are multiple sources you can use. Adobe has a great color scheme website called Adobe Color, in which you can tack your favorite colors and Adobe will help you find other colors that go with it based on certain color schemes or whatever you want. You can customize it. Because I had in the back of my mind that I use a way too much color, I first bought a rainbow vinyl set, which I had a sweatsuit that I put my logo on, which was navy blue. And I thought, how fun would it be if I could put these polka dots on this navy blue suit around my logo and wear that out and have people realize that my name is associated with this design. As you can see, I started placing circles onto the navy blue and it looks okay, but I really did not like the product. And I will show you kind of what I was going through at that time period. Something clicked and I realized that the contrast was way too high. It was way too loud. And I was gonna need to go with something like a dark gray or a medium gray. And I needed to add fully saturated primary and secondary colors to really ground this. I know it sounds strange, but to use really saturated colors to ground this down. In another multi-pack of vinyl that I bought, you have these metallics, these mirror metallics, these subtle metallics, and these holographic vinyls, which I also used. I treated these as my neutrals along with the off-whites. So those I kind of set aside and left them as like multiple different finishes on gold was just gold. Multiple different finishes on white and off-white was just white. And then I was able to build a color palette off of that using the new tones and the mirror tones that I had received in my second order of vinyl. I pulled out the sweatshirt. I started to align the polka dots on there. And here's where we get into the strategy with polka dots. At Kate Spade, we used to put gold polka dots in 3-inch circles all over a lot of our installations on the walls and in things in stores and on some of our stationery. When we did this, the idea was when you do polka dots on a piece, no polka dot should align vertically or horizontally to another polka dot. That means that your eye is always traveling in diagonals. If you align one vertically or horizontally, it stops the eye. So you'll notice if you go look at gridded polka dots and you look at ones that are not, your eye travels much more in the ones that are not. That's for a basic, evenly distributed polka dot composition. I used a standard Chi brand iron to put these circles on. I will recommend that if you are not using a professional heat press, you press down with a lot of weight, like your full body weight, on these circles when you apply them. That means you will be pushing and pushing and pushing. And one of the things that I was told by a friend who does this professionally is with heat transfers, if you can see a little bit of the grain of the fabric through the heat transfer has a little bit of texture because you've pressed it in so hard. That means you have great adherence to the fabric. These vinyls have a protective plastic sheet on them It makes it easier to cut because they are so sticky and stretchy, and it makes them, it protects them when you apply them with an iron. For troubleshooting purposes, make sure you are putting the vinyl on side down with the plastic on top. Twice, I ironed the vinyl right onto my iron plate and had to clean it off, and it was very, very stressful. When I moved on to the sweatpants, I knew I was going to have to hem those to make them into shorts. What I didn't realize when I ordered the sweatpants was that they didn't have any pockets. And there was absolutely no way I was going to wear a sweatpant without pockets in it. So when I hemmed off the legs of the pants, I cut pocket patterns out of the refuse and just sewed those into the side seam on the pants. Now that does go through one of the polka dots I had placed, but that was okay. I used a zigzag stitch on the shorts at the bottom and I rolled it under once. But when I began ironing, I made sure I pressed really hard on the vinyls that went around the bottom of the hem because I knew that was going to be a durability issue and I knew that they might crack there or might start to flake there first. I have used this Arteza vinyl before, as I've said, and I made the sweatsuit with my logo on it. That piece has been washed on high heat and dried on high heat for the past 6 or 7 years with no degradation. So I do trust that this vinyl will be okay. I worry that maybe these mirror vinyls will lose their luster, but I don't think they'll completely lose their metallic attributes, so I think we will be okay there as well. Please remember that most of these sweatsuits contain a synthetic fiber in them, which it melts at a much lower temperature than what you would iron cotton at. So many of these are cotton with polyester in them. The vinyl melts and adheres at a polyester iron level. So at a synthetic level setting on your iron is perfectly fine for these. I made the mistake of turning the iron up a little bit too much and it made one of the dots look very strange and melted. Don't do that. What I do recommend is that when you are making this and if you are having any troubles with getting the circles to adhere, before you go through anything, go through each circle one by one and for 10 seconds, iron it and use your entire body weight onto these. Once I did that, I tested the fit. I tested, where this sat on my body, kind of walked around and filmed myself, seeing, if this was durable, if these were going to fall off. The only change I want to make in the future is that this was a very cheap sweatsuit set from Gildan, and I want to change how the drawstring functions because the drawstring is just a single piece of shoelace and it's on the interior of the pant, and I want it to be on the exterior, and I want it to truly tie because I want it to hold more weight because I want to fill my pockets when I go out. But I wore this out. It was a great social piece. There were so many conversations I had with people around it. It worked really well. I loved wearing it and it felt really fun. It was a little warm for it, but the shorts helped, and I just really enjoyed it. But that's the process. It's super easy. The most monotonous thing for me was hand cutting out the vinyls and just troubleshooting any kind of ironing issues, but it's very straightforward. All the directions that you need for ironing are in those vinyl packets, so they give you explicit instruction. And the hardest part probably will be picking out a color scheme. So I hope you all get out there and try to do this because this has been a lot of fun. Thanks for watching.